Appeal to ignorance, logical fallacy. What is an appeal to ignorance? It can be defined in two ways. The first way is it is an argument with a logical fallacy that claims that because no one has shown something to be true, then it is not true. Also, it is an argument with a logical fallacy that claims that because no one has shown something to not be true, then it is true. This type of logical fallacy confuses between two ideas. It confuses between absence of evidence with evidence of absence. If you're thinking, wait a moment, what? Aren't those the same thing? I'm a bit confused. That's too much words for me. Let me give you an illustration. We have a door here. And if I say, no one has shown there is anything behind the door, therefore there is nothing behind the door, it makes no sense. The door was never opened. We don't know what's behind the door. We don't know if there is something, and we don't know if there is nothing. We don't know. And that is what ignorance means. We don't have knowledge. We can't use that ignorance to make an argument. So there's a first structure for this type of argument, and it goes like this. The premise says no one has shown that X is true, and X may be whatever you want it to be. And the conclusion is, therefore, X is not true. So here's an example using the door. No one has shown there is anything behind the door. Therefore, there is nothing behind the door. Well, really? Do we know that? Is this actually evidence? And the answer is no. There's no evidence to support this conclusion. This is not a good conclusion. It's not a strong conclusion. Then there is a second type of structure for this argument. No one has shown that X is not true. Therefore, X is true. Again, X may be whatever you want it to be. So let's take another look using the same door as an example. No one has shown there is nothing behind the door. Therefore, there is something behind the door. Again, really, we don't know anything, so we can't say there is something, just like we can't say there is nothing. The reality is, there is an absence of evidence. We don't have any evidence to support it. Now, the difference between evidence of absence and absence of evidence is this. If the door is like this, and we're standing in front of it, and we can't go in, we have an absence of evidence for what is inside. Meaning, we don't have evidence at all. We don't know what's in there, or if there's nothing in there either. We don't know. We're ignorant of what's going on inside. However, if we open up the door and find something in there, now we have evidence. And if we open it up and there's nothing in there, we have evidence of absence, because we actually see what's inside. But if I say, no one has shown there's anything behind it and the door's closed and we haven't gone in and we don't know anyone who has gone in and told us, then we can't make that argument. It is a fallacy. Fallacy meaning it is an error in reasoning. So why is this a fallacy? It is because there is no evidence to support our argument, our conclusion. And arguments are based on evidence. It can be quite misleading. Many times people will accept an argument that appeals to ignorance because they don't think through that the argument was actually not supported by anything. It appears that it was based on the structure. But we should know this argument and this type of fallacy and this fallacious structure so we can understand reasoning and how people think. And also, we can think whether we're going to accept that argument or not. If it is an argument like the two that I showed you, then we should not accept it. There's no evidence for what is behind or what is not behind the door. Until evidence arises, we can't make those conclusions using that type of evidence. This type of fallacy actually has a function, and it's there to raise doubts. Now, those doubts may not be necessary. You may know someone who went behind the door and saw what was there, and he tells you there's so-and-so or there's nothing behind the door. But that is actually evidence at that point. You know someone that went behind the door. How do we identify an appeal to ignorance? Number one, we have to identify the premises and conclusion of an argument. After we have done that, we have to ask this question. Is the premise or premises claiming there is no knowledge or evidence for an object? If the answer is yes, then we need to go to the conclusion. Is the conclusion not supported by evidence then? And if the answer is yes, we've identified an appeal to ignorance. Our support statements cannot simply be that there is no knowledge or evidence for what we are talking about and then make a conclusion about it. Another example. There is no evidence that aliens do not exist. Therefore, aliens exist. UFO people always use this type of argument, but notice, there's no evidence. So how can we claim that we know they exist? If there's no evidence, we don't know anything about aliens. But on the other hand, other people use this as well. The other argument, there is no evidence that aliens do exist. Therefore, aliens do not exist. Again, we don't know. There is no knowledge about this. So the question must be put aside until we can figure out whether there are aliens or not using evidence. Trivia. Why is this called appeal to ignorance? Well, the word ignorance in Latin means lack of knowledge. Instead of appealing to knowledge, this argument appeals to a lack of knowledge to support its conclusion, and that simply cannot work. We need evidence to support a conclusion. Example number 5. There is a mysterious light in the sky. That's premise 1. Premise 2. No one has explained what that light is. Therefore, it is an alien spacecraft. Notice how premise 2 is the appeal to ignorance. Premise 1 is a fact. There is a mysterious light in the sky. Premise 2, no one has explained what that light is. So appeal to ignorance. Nobody knows what it is. Therefore, I know what it is. It's an alien spacecraft. Again, how do you know it's an alien spacecraft? That is an example of appeal to ignorance. For more videos, you can click here to watch the video on the logical fallacy, appeal to novelty, or this video on the logical fallacy, begging the question, or this video on what is an argument. Thanks for watching.